March 23, 1945. Patton's Third Army had just crossed the Rhine, 65 miles in 2 days, flanks unprotected, moving so fast the German lines couldn't close around them. He was at the peak of his career. His own diary entry called the Third Army the eighth wonder of the world. That night, he wrote a letter to his wife Beatrice. "We are heading right for John's place, and may get there before he is moved." John was Lieutenant Colonel John K. Waters, Patton's son-in-law. He had been a German prisoner of war for 2 years. Waters was captured in February 1943 at the Battle of Kasserine Pass, one of the worst American defeats of the entire war. Rommel's Afrika Korps hit an inexperienced U.S. force and broke it. Waters went down in the chaos and ended up in German hands. For 2 years, Patton fought across North Africa, Sicily, France, and into Germany. And somewhere in the back of every calculation was a man married to his daughter, sitting in a prison camp. By March 1945, intelligence confirmed Waters had been marched from a camp in Poland to Oflag XIII-B, a prisoner of war camp near the German town of Hammelburg. About 1,500 American officers were held there, along with 4,000 Serbian officers. Hammelburg was 50 miles east of Patton's forward position, behind German lines. Patton's top subordinates told him the same thing, independently, when he raised the idea of a raid. "Don't do it." General Manton Eddy, 12th Corps commander, said the force needed would be at least a full combat command. Thousands of men, proper support, a real operation. General Creighton Abrams, one of the finest armored commanders in the Army, called it a suicide mission with the resources Patton was proposing. Patton overruled them. He authorized a task force of just over 300 men, 16 tanks, 27 half-tracks, assorted vehicles. Commanded by Captain Abraham Baum, a 23-year-old from the Bronx who had enlisted after Pearl Harbor and earned his rank through 2 years of hard combat. Baum was told the objective: penetrate 50 miles behind enemy lines, liberate a POW camp holding approximately 300 officers, and return. The number 300 was wrong. The camp held over 1,500. Patton knew the real number. March 26th, before dawn, Task Force Baum moved out. What followed over the next 48 hours was not a raid. It was a gauntlet. The force fought through 7 separate German engagements on the way to Hammelburg. German units, ad hoc formations pulled together from whatever was available, Volkssturm militia, SS stragglers, regular Wehrmacht, hit them at bridges, at road junctions, through villages. They also passed through something stranger. German soldiers who had simply given up. Men standing on roadsides, weapons stacked, waiting to surrender to anyone who would take them. Russian slave laborers who ran toward the American column cheering. Germany was collapsing in real time, and Baum's men were driving through the collapse. They reached Hammelburg on the afternoon of March 27th. Half their strength was already gone. The prisoners heard them coming. The camp had endured a brutal winter. Food was short. Coal for the stoves had run out. Men were sleeping in their coats, some too weak to stand. The American officers had been marched 340 miles from Poland through the snow in January, arriving at Hammelburg in early March, already exhausted, already starving. When Baum's tanks broke through the wire, thousands of men poured out of the barracks, cheering, grabbing at the soldiers, asking questions, offering to fight, trying to climb onto vehicles. Baum did the calculation immediately. He had come expecting 300 men. There were over 1,500 Americans alone. He had fuel for the return trip calculated for a small group. The vehicles were already damaged. He had lost almost a third of his force getting here. He could take perhaps 200 men back. That meant leaving over 1,000 behind. Among the men who came out of the barracks was John Waters. He had been shot trying to walk toward the American lines under a white flag. A German guard had fired without warning. The bullet had torn through his hip. He was barely mobile. Waters was brought to Baum. The two men had never met. Waters told Baum the situation clearly. He couldn't be moved without a proper medical evacuation, and Baum's force was in no condition to fight its way back out. Waters told Baum to leave him, save the men who could move. Baum left him. It was the right call. It was also the moment the entire mission crystallized into what it actually was. A 300-man force sent 50 miles behind enemy lines to rescue one man, now leaving that man behind because the force was too small to do anything else. The return trip was worse than the approach. German units had closed behind them. The roads they had come in on were blocked. Baum tried alternate routes, ran into ambushes, lost more vehicles, more men. On the night of March 27th, the remnants of Task Force Baum were surrounded and destroyed near the village of Hörick. Baum was shot in the groin while trying to escape on foot through the woods. He was captured by Volkssturm militia, elderly German men conscripted in the last weeks of the war, and taken back to Hemmelberg, where the Serbian doctor at the camp hospital operated on him. He woke up in the same camp he had been sent to liberate. Of the roughly 300 men who went in, 32 were killed. Only 35 made it back to Allied lines. The rest were captured. All 57 tanks and armored vehicles were destroyed or taken. The liberated prisoners were rounded up and marched east, deeper into Germany. Most were recaptured within days. Some were shot during the confusion. Waters remained at Hammelburg, too wounded to march. He was still there 9 days later when the 14th Armored Division arrived and liberated the camp properly, with adequate force and a real plan. Baum was there too. He had been in the camp for 9 days. Patton came to see him personally after the liberation. He awarded Baum the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military decoration. A Medal of Honor would have required a formal investigation. Patton was not interested in a formal investigation. Eisenhower found out and was furious. The mission had been unauthorized. Patton had told Bradley it was approved. Bradley said he never approved it. The post-war accounts never fully resolved who authorized what. What is clear is what Patton wrote to his wife the day he ordered the raid. Hope to send an expedition tomorrow to get John. Not 300 American officers. Not the liberation of a POW camp. Get John. Eisenhower reprimanded him. The incident was buried as quickly as possible, classified, not discussed publicly until after the war. Patton's own verdict on what happened at Hammelburg appears in his memoirs. A single line, almost offhand, in a chapter about the final push into Germany. Throughout the campaign in Europe, I know of no error I made, except that of failing to send a combat command to take Hammelburg. He meant the mission was right. The force was too small. If he had sent more men, it would have worked. His biographer Carlo d'Este disagreed. D'Este called Hammelburg the least defensible decision Patton ever made, and nearly as self-destructive as the slappings in Sicily. The argument between those two assessments, Patton's and d'Este's, is the real question the raid leaves behind. Was it a personal mission disguised as a military operation? Almost certainly. Waters himself, years later, was asked if he believed the raid was ordered because of him. He said he did. He also said he wished it hadn't been. 32 men died. Hundreds more were captured, marched east, some killed in the chaos. All of it for a mission that Patton's own top commanders told him was under-resourced, that failed exactly as they predicted it would, that liberated no one who stayed liberated, and that left the man it was designed to save sitting in a camp hospital, waiting for a proper army to come through 9 days later. Abe Baum spent the rest of his life carrying Hammelburg. He was bitter about it in ways that never fully resolved. He lost men he had commanded for 2 years. He was shot and captured on a mission he had been told was going to a 300-man camp when everyone above him knew it was 5 times that size. In interviews late in his life, he said he never blamed Patton for ordering the raid. He blamed him for the size of the force. "Give me a proper combat command, and we would have gotten everyone out. What he gave me was enough men to die." Baum died in 2013 at 91. The camp at Hammelburg still exists. It's been a German army training base since the war ended, used continuously by the Wehrmacht, then the West German Bundeswehr, now the unified German army. The barracks where Waters lay wounded are gone. The wire is gone. The coal yard where men froze through the winter of 1944 to 45 is a parade ground. 32 names from Task Force Baum do not appear on monuments or in histories people read. They appear in the after-action report that Patton filed, marked classified and preferred not to discuss. They went 50 miles behind enemy lines on the word of a general who needed something personal and sent them anyway. That is what Hammelburg actually was. And Patton knew it. He said so, in his own way, in that single line in his memoirs, framing it as a logistical error, a force-sizing problem, the kind of mistake a general admits when he cannot admit the thing underneath it. The force wasn't too small. The mission was wrong.